Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly ISFSI Fire Engineering Humpday Hangout. Got a great cast of characters today. We'll go around and introduce ourselves, but I'll start. I'm Brian Zaits, First Vice President of the International Society of Fire Service Instructors, and we have our normal cast: Chief Shaw of Fort Lauderdale, Chief Marcotte down in Northville Township of Michigan, and Captain Brian Gettemeyer of Cotterville suburb out here of St. Louis. So good guys. So you've seen all these people before with ISFSI, but today we're going to talk about after actions and post-incident analysis as they relate to training and how valuable those are for our training, right? So we all go on calls. We learn from those calls through on-job, through just the on-job experience, if you will, of those things. But how do we formalize that, and how do we actually turn that into a training tool so that just not those crews that operate on the scene learn from it, but our entire department learns from it? And then how do we formalize that into a process so that we have a standard procedure moving forward with our organization? So all those things and many, many more, I'm sure we will discuss today. So I guess I'll put it out there. So what are you guys doing for in your own organizations for after actions, post-incident analysis? And Jesse, you want to start?
Absolutely, yes. So obviously there's so many benefits to an after-action review or post-incident analysis, whether it's a super formal after-action review or a more informal, quick debrief of an incident. But we have a policy that kind of outlines what the scope of those after-action reviews looks like and when they should be conducted. So our typical after-action review is very much dependent on the incidents that we respond to. We try to get those after-action reviews processed for all the critical runs. So whether it's a cardiac arrest on the EMS side, vehicle electrocution on the fire side, or an actual structure fire, our goal is to piece that together as well as we can from a timeline perspective and get that back in the hands of the crews that responded to that call, and then ultimately to the other shifts that we have as well, so they can also learn from the incident.
Perfect. Shaw, what do you got? What's Fort Lauderdale doing besides being beautiful weather?
Oh yeah, I'm not going to even start bragging about that because I can go on all day. But so I'm really happy you chose this topic of conversation today. I for one, am very passionate about doing the post-incident reviews, the after-action reviews. I've been a part of a ton of them through my career, especially in the last few years. Like Jesse was saying, we have a dedicated protocol, an SOP on how to conduct those, and right now we're in the process of revamping it and updating it to allow for to do more of them. In the past, we did them kind of on a sporadic basis, where if there was a big incident with a lot of lessons learned, we put one together. At the time, years ago, it was a written format. In the training bureau, and again, I've been in training now for about 10 years, we were doing them video-based, and we'd have the crews come in from different incidents, and everything from, we would take camera video footage from the news to our own camera footage from the scene, combine them into self-made videos in the training bureau, or get together with the screen and have the first arriving crews kind of show on a screen what they were doing when they first got in there, what their thoughts were, what their actions were, what their lessons learned were, and so on and so forth. We've done them on large-scale incidents. Like, for example, last year in April, we had a large flooding issue in Fort Lauderdale where close to over 2 feet of water fell in a very short time frame, and we were out there for a long time battling that. We did a very extensive after-action review on that with the local agencies that assisted us, and with a written one afterwards as well. And right now, I'm very proud to be developing a regular series of after-action reports, both EMS and fire incident-based, going forward for the year. So every month, every other month there'll be an EMS one, and every other month there'll be a fire or incident-based one that we're putting together right now. So we take them very seriously. There's a lot of lessons to be learned through those, like Jess was saying. And I'm glad that we're talking about this today, dive into this.
No, I think it's good too. And, just to kind of dovetail on that, I think I'll speak for myself. Like, we don't have a policy in place where I work currently, right? Like, we don't have a policy procedure that says that. And that's something that probably I'll come out with after this discussion, just because it does lead to that sporadicness of, hey, this was an incident, we'll do, or this wasn't an incident, we'll do, or, and it alleviates some of that confusion as to whether we should or shouldn't, or is it really necessary? So I like that idea. We'll discuss that. I want to talk about that more as we go. So, Brian, what about you guys? What's Cotterville doing for these?
We're kind of like you are, Brian. We're a little bit more informal, and either the company officer is saying it's something we need to discuss, it's a bigger incident, or it's driven by the incident commander, our battalion chief. So that's going to vary from incident to incident, crew to crew on how often they get together and what depth we go to. Not near what Steve's doing. I mean, we're just doing some incident photos and a Google map of the street and hydrant layout and stuff like that. Good, better, and different. We don't get a ton of those super critical incidents, but I think we can learn so much on the little ones to help us prepare for the big ones. So it has its place, but it's not a steady course that we're using here.
I think that's a good point too, and something that when we were discussing before we started this thing going live was talking about EMS calls and learning from those things too. But I think too, to your point of the basic routine runs, things we can learn. We got 2 highways that come through my town, and just the simple tailboard talks, if you will, like, hey, what are some things you guys notice? What are some things we can improve on, and just build those on those simple ones. So the tailboard discussion of a post-incident analysis happening at the company level that never gets formalized. Is probably just as, if not more, critical than some of the more formalized procedures and programs that we're going to put in place. And so, what are you guys putting in your post-incident analysis, after actions, whatever we want to call them, for these things? What are the key points you're trying to look for, and what's that process look like in your organization? So, Shaw, you got a pretty good foundation on it, sounds like there. So, can you walk us through kind of what you guys are doing and what it kind of looks like?
So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. I think that primarily when we do these things is one, celebrating our wins, celebrating the things we do good. I think that in any conversation, any presentation that we do, I always like to start with gratitude. I think it's very important that when we're starting these, whether it's a written format, video format, in-person format, is that we start with gratitude and really, really highlight all the things that went right, all the things that we do well, all the things that we've trained on and that were deployed at those incidents, to make sure people know that, hey, the training we're doing does matter. The training we're doing does result in positive outcomes. So I think whenever we're doing this, we always start with the positive. For us, we go through introduction, scene, summary of what we were exposed to or what they found out first on scene. And the main part of it, depending on what it is, whether it's written or in person, is the after-action review. In other words, the surveys that were gathered, the questions that we had, and really just diving into the lessons learned from those crews. So some of the favorite ones that I've done back when I was in training is we did, as an example, house fires. We had a 2-story house fire in one of our neighborhoods near the water on a large house, 2-story structure, CBS construction, and the bottom floor was a large garage with multi-million-dollar vehicles in there, and that caught fire. The reason this was impactful is, one, the way we did it is we had most of the people that were on that scene actually narrate what they did with the video, with the screen in the back, kind of narrating what they found, why they did this, what they did that. And it was just powerful to hear all those people give their accounts. And a lot of them were senior officers and senior firefighters, senior drivers. So when they were talking, you were listening. You're realizing that the words that were coming out of their mouth were gold. For example, the division chief on scene, it was John St. Angelo. He just recently retired. And one of the most profound things he said during the scene was, I looked at this like a residential fire, when in fact, I should have been thinking like this as a commercial fire, just based on what I had. And when a guy like that, a guy that's a senior, respected member of a department, says and takes that humble humility approach and goes, man, I was thinking this, but I should have did that, that echoes down the chain. That gives permission for everybody in the group to do the same thing, where they have that freedom, that permission to say, you know what, I did this, maybe I should have done this, or admit some of the things they could have done better. So that's some of the things that come out of this. But for the most part, we like the interaction between the crews. We like to hear their firsthand accounts. But then there's that balance too. We want to make sure that we professionally recognize where areas we could have improved. And like I said before, as soon as you have someone with that I guess the one that's been there for a while, that professionalism, the guy that's the people that have been there for a while who have that respect, and they offer what they could have done, it just echoes through, and everybody kind of has that permission to do so. At the end of the day, I guess including the lessons learned, one of the things from the admin side, like from my side now, is, okay, this is what we learned, this is what we did. What are we doing now? So after our flash floods last year, okay, we had this incident. Wow, it really was an interesting time frame. We did good, but we have a lot of lessons learned, a lot of things we can improve. What are we doing? Are we increasing the cache of high water response vehicles? Are we getting waders? Are we getting wets? What are we doing afterwards? So I think that as much as these are great for the lessons learned, to hearing our own people describe what they did, there has to be follow-up as well. So is prevention doing more investigations on something they can improve in the field? Are we increasing our cache of equipment? Are we preparing ourselves for when this happens again to do that much better? So I know I'm drifting here a little bit, but these are the kind of things we think of. There's a lot to break down with these, but they're very impactful. When your own people, when you highlight your wins, when your own people are describing what they did, and you're developing that internal content for your own people, there's a lot to be learned.
No, I think that's right. And when we do our after actions here, it's you have to open yourself to be vulnerable. That's a huge thing when you admit that you're wrong, or there's a better way to do something, or even something small. Like I should have done this, and even if it's small. When it comes from somebody, like you said, a senior member, ranking officer, something like that, it allows everybody else in the room to kind of take a deep breath and be like, okay, we all saw that wasn't the best incident, right? There's always areas to improve. And I think that's great. I also would say too, to that, when you do these things, highlight those strong points. But to your point too, Steve, is that, don't be afraid to, take a shot at yourself maybe and say, hey, I could have done this better. Knowing that you're in a safe, I don't want to say safe room or safe space like that, but that you're in an environment to where everybody's trying to get better, right? At the end of the day, this organization can only get better if we kind of admit our flaws and our faults on that scene. And so, when you're doing these after actions, these post-incident analysis things, look for those opportunities to learn, to discuss, so that, like we'll talk here in a little bit, it leads to some high quality training that's actually impactful because it's based off of a real need in an organization. So Jesse, what about you guys? What are you guys doing up there?
Yeah, we use a standard format. It's very basic. We borrowed it from the United States Army. They have a lot of great resources online for people looking to improve their after action review process. So the 4 basic questions that we answer, and again, to keep these after action reviews consistent, we ask what was planned, what really happened, why did it happen, and then what will we sustain and or improve next time. And each one of those questions has basically a series of criteria that helps you build the answer to that question, right? So what was planned? What was our initial action plan? Incident crew assignments, all those sorts of things. And it just kind of builds it in a nice chronological order and facilitates the conversation. And probably the biggest thing that I've learned with this myself is there's always a desire to get this out. Like, we want to get this information out and be really good with it. But until we have all the facts from that incident, if we don't start that after action review with the crew that was on that run, it leads to lots of questions. And then the feeling that maybe that crew is being Monday morning quarterbacked by people who weren't there. So we, after doing this for a while, we answer the same 4 questions each time, keep it factual, and we start with the crews that were involved with the incident.
So I'm gonna go to Brian, but I want to circle back to both of you guys. So I'll be thinking about this when I come back. But both of you guys hit on points that I know I don't do, and I know that we don't do well. That's that questions, right? So we get all the facts up front before the after action. So I think that's a huge component of it. Instead of just bringing everybody in and be like, hey, we're doing after action, you guys actually take the forethought to say, okay, here, let's discuss this with the crews beforehand, so that when we meet, you're optimizing that time. And I just want to maybe discuss that a little bit here after Brian. What about you guys, Brian?
I'm a big top 5 guy. So for me, it's identify the top 5 things that went well, and identify the top 5 things that we have growth opportunity. Because it's too easy to be positive, rah the whole time, or the other way is, blaming or finger pointing, or let's look at all the bad things you did. Where top 5 just kind of puts it in, hey, what are the 5 things we really need to do to grow? And then likewise, what are the 5 things we did very well? And then get those out. I don't think sometimes we celebrate the wins. Steve kind of mentioned that at the beginning about celebrating the wins and the things we did right. Well, are we passing that on to the other crews? So, so the top 5 just gave a balance between the two, right? Between the growth opportunities and sometimes you got to get way deep in the weeds because things went well. But there's always 5 things we can improve on every incident, right? We can, in an auto extrication and a cardiac arrest, there's 5 things that, hey, can we do this different? So that's kind of where I'm at a little bit more, really kind of being a company officer and doing our critiques more at the kitchen table, about, hey, let's talk about our last incident and go from there. So just nothing formal. Just let's sit down as a crew. Let's identify what you saw, what I saw, and what we could do different.
I like that, and we'll talk about that too. Is I want to talk about how do we get this information from the, you got a big department like Shaw's got there, to smaller departments like we're in. How do we ensure that if one battalion of Fort Lauderdale ran something, that everybody in the department learns from it? Kirkwood, if one of my shifts runs a fire, how does everybody benefit from that incident so that we're all learning? Because we all agree, incidents of significant nature are down. So the more opportunities we can learn from those. And how can we get that information out in a good pattern? So Jesse and Steve, I want to ask you guys. So you guys talked about these questions. I know Steve, you mentioned some interviews, and Jesse, you mentioned the questionnaire planning and what happened, why, and then how do we grow? So do you guys formalize and sit down from the train? Like Shaw, you guys got a training division. So Steve, are you sitting down with your guys and then like conducting interviews prior to them coming together, or are you sending out like a questionnaire and they're answering, or how does that process work? So that you're getting the information up front prior to the development of the post or the after action.
Jesse, you want to take this, or you want me to answer this first?
It's totally up to you.
Okay. Well, so I'll give you an example. So what we're doing right now is, like I said, for this year, for example, as part of the scope of professional development, which now falls under me, we're taking these very seriously. And rather than being sporadic in nature, we're trying to put some structure behind it. So like monthly, we're going to be producing one of these. Nothing crazy, not something terribly long, but something visual with the video part of it, a little bit of written part of it as well as some surveys, and then putting it together in a short video that we're going to put on our learning management system for people to watch and encompass all the things you just mentioned, those learning points. So, for example, our first two that we're using this year, the EMS one is the first time we gave whole blood. Not we gave whole blood, but we worked with BSO, Broward Sheriff's Office, and collaborated with them. So they were giving whole blood on one of our trauma patients. And considering it was the first time we gave whole blood, it's a big deal. For us, we're going to use this as not only an after action and a post-incident analysis and a review, but also part of the initial training for them to understand why we're giving TXA, how we communicate with BSO, what does that look like on scene, and eventually, when we get the right equipment and the buy-in to actually give whole blood in the field. So we're using it as a tool. So for this one, we're sending out surveys to the crews that were on scene, to the battalion chiefs, and to the other department. And after we get those surveys, we already got the information in. We're going to review it. I'm working with my new EMS chief, Leslie St. Fleur, who is new to EMS. And the reason I'm mentioning him is because I always believe in a plus one. I always believe in a redundancy. I don't work in a vacuum. I don't work in a silo. I'm always sharing the knowledge. I'm always helping other people grow. And this is, for him, a way to, quote unquote, as my fire chief likes to say, make EMS sexy again. Okay. So for him and me working on this, it develops a redundancy. It develops him up as a platform. And every other month, people are seeing him on the video going through this with the crews on what went right, what we can expect, and how it relates to training. So we're developing that right now. Once we get the information, we're scheduled at the end of this month to meet with the crew that was on scene, video record them, give them their 2 cents of what they found on scene, what the challenges were, what the opportunities are. We're going to have BSO join us, so it's a collaborative effort between us and another organization. We're going to have our medical director say a few words, and then put it together, stitch together, use our hopefully our video guy from the city to kind of stitch it all together in a pretty way, and then put it out for training for the whole department. So 400 plus people will see this short little video clip we put together. We're thinking somewhere between 5 or 10 minutes, followed by some questions and whatnot. The fire-based one is going to be on a recent call that we had involving a trailer full of lithium-ion batteries that caught fire. Now, for us, like everybody else, we're dealing with the lithium-ion battery thing. So what better way to dump some training out there other than using a training or using an incident that we recently had. So we've already talked to fire investigators. We talked to the crews that were on scene. We talked to some people in our neck of the woods who are really into that space. And we're going to put them all together and kind of do the same thing. We got a bunch of surveys that were completed. We're going to come together and do some video clips of the scenes, pictures, have people narrate what they saw, and then some lessons learned. And then afterwards, we're hoping that'll get the body for people to understand that this is a big deal. Here's some additional training for you guys to understand. And the action items for us are going to be to flesh out our SOPs, develop our SOPs, incorporate this into future training, and to move forward. So what we're trying to do is take advantage of those after actions, trying to make it consistent, not just sporadic, but consistent going forward. give our own people some time to explain what they did on scene, give them some limelight, and then follow it up with some action to say, okay, we hear you from the admin side. This is what we're doing to support you guys. So when you have this in the future, you're better prepared. So that's just a kind of a snapshot of our at least our goal for the series going forward this year.
No, I think it's good. I like the idea of the rotation, right? Fire EMS every other month. That's a good rotation. I like the idea of, like you said, not operating in your silo, highlighting some other people and showing the cohesiveness of your administration together. That's good. And then, like I said, the video aspect of it, that was a very visual thing that people, you can engage in. People are going to engage in that, whether it be on their phone, on the TV, in a firehouse or whatever, computer, whatever. I feel like sometimes these emails come out and you're not sure if anybody read them or it really sank in. And I think, in today's day and age, the more digital you go, the better off you're probably going to be in engaging people. So, Jesse, what about you? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I love some that Chief Shaw mentioned. He mentioned the admin side is there to support the operations side. And that's really our job, is mission support, right? We're not in the mission control business. We're in the mission support business as a training division. And really our process is pretty collaborative. So I'm working on right now from structure fire we had about 10 days ago. And the battalion chief on scene, the incident commander, has done a fantastic job of assembling all the resources. So he put in immediately for all the body camera footage, the dash camera footage, and all of the audio from dispatch. So it's organized very nice and neat. We met yesterday. There's 186 separate radio transmissions over the several hour period we were on scene. He had notes on every one of them, pulled them up. He's like, pull up number 48, pull up number 86. This is the priority traffic. This is that. So we try to piece it all together chronologically using the resources at our disposal, and then ensure that information, like we said, is objective and takes into account the opinion of the crews that were there. So there's that quantitative piece where we're capturing the information, the facts that happen. And then there's a qualitative piece that we get from talking to people. So, but a lot of times it starts with the incident commander and the conversation back and forth of what we should focus in on and what were those successes, and what are the things we want to make sure we're communicating with the department as a whole.
No, that's great too. And to the visual digital aspect of it, the pictures and videos, there's all kinds of stuff out there, right? There's helmet camera videos that people have. There's dash cam videos the police have, body cameras,
bystander videos.
Here recently in St. Louis, I'm sure everybody saw the green ladder truck that spun out of control on the ice. That made, international news within a matter of just a couple hours because it went viral. And so how do we manage those pictures and videos? Because we know they're beneficial, right? And so we have to be able to have access to those. But from a department standpoint, how do we do that, right? How does that work with us? So Brian, when you guys are doing these things, what are you doing to get access to pictures, videos, and then essentially using those to benefit your after action and not just, create a hindrance or maybe show somebody shortfall or something of that nature?
So we're not doing dash cams. We don't allow helmet cams. So the footage we're getting from our guys is very limited. But what we are getting is videos from bystanders and stuff like that. I mean, everybody has a Ring camera that picks up something. So we have to be Ring cam ready, especially on EMS calls. Sometimes we forget. But yeah, we're going to gather as much of that as possible and put it out there. In the case of the green fire truck, I think the fire chief did a good job and got out ahead of it. Like he owned it. It's the ice. There's no control of my truck on the ice. But then why would I limit that to my organization? Steve probably doesn't have to deal with ice, but the rest of us do, right? They put it on the road sometimes to make the fire truck slide. But why not get ahead of it? That was a perfect opportunity for me as a company officer with a very young driver to say, hey, when we go out on the ice and I tell you to slow down, this is what I want to avoid, because it happens in a second. You have total control and then you don't. So why hide, right? Why not own it? In that case, I applaud that department. There was no way they were going to hide from it. So get out there and show it. And and try to make it a positive. And I think they did a very good job of making that a positive organization. Everybody's going to light you up, right? They're going to point fingers. So let's tell our story, right? Because the video doesn't tell the whole story. The picture doesn't tell the whole story. It's just a snippet, right? So people don't know that.
No, I totally agree. And, to your point, I mean, they got out way ahead of it and did a great job in talking about it. I think you brought up another good point too, that, just has nothing to do with after actions, but just from a today's perspective in the emergency services world is that there are cameras everywhere, right? In houses, outside of houses, most have audio. So just be cognizant of that when you're walking from room to room or walking up on a house. Everything you say is recorded. So just be aware of that. So yeah, I mean, there's the opportunities everywhere to learn. So I'll tell you one. We had one here in Kirkwood, burned a garage, and while we're on the scene, people are posting videos on Facebook and social media related to the fire. Before we even arrived, how big this fire was, and it was a well-involved garage and things like that. So we were able to use those photos, contacted those people through some social media channels, and they added to our experience because it provided that look of, this is what you showed up on. Like, the first due officer was so engaged in deploying lines, and how much fire did you have? Well, I had a lot. Well, what's a lot look like, right? And so having that video, this is what it looked like prior to you even going. This is what it looked like. And to your point, so with the ring cameras, those are great. I mean, if we only knew where they were, so we wouldn't block the trucks with them, so we could get the full image of them recording the entire incident for us. But they do a fantastic job of showing the progression of us on the scene. So, it's kind of like our own film crew, if you will. If we can talk to those people and access those camera videos and use those for our trainings, it's definitely going to be beneficial. And then also too, one of the things that I like to do is take pictures after the fire, like show some of the things like on that garage, a lot of injuries occur after a fire. And so, I had videos of the structure and it burned out, the burned out trusses and things, and just show people, hey, this is what we're dealing with, right? So like everything was good and we were good, but when we told you to stay out of the garage, this is kind of the reason. So we can show that why to our crews. So I don't know if anybody, Steve or Jesse, you got any thoughts on pictures and videos in addition to that stuff?
Yeah, so I've always been, and still remain today, a very huge proponent and fan of videos and pictures on the fire scene, whether it's helmet cam or whatever. Under the controlled environment and and this is the admin guy in me talking, under a very firm SOP defining its use. I can remember, this is maybe 15 years ago, I had a helmet cam, and one of my chiefs absolutely hated that I had it. And every time he saw me, he was like, "Is that thing on?" I'm like, "No, sir, it's not on." Or, yeah, whatever. But and I remember what kind of gave me permission to use it afterwards is my fire chief at the time came to me right before our 100-year anniversary event came up, and he goes, "Steve, I need some videos." And I'm like, "I'm not sure what you're talking about, Chief." He goes, "Steve, I know you have the videos. I need the videos. Just give them to me." I'm like, "So you're saying that I can do this?" He goes, "Yes, perfect." So from that day on, I was pretty much somewhat given free reign to take as many videos as I can, because he knew I was doing it the right way. I wasn't posting them all over the place. I wasn't doing it in a negative way. I was bringing them back to the station. We were watching them, critiquing them. And a lot of it was self-critique. Like we were talking about earlier, Brian mentioned, having that humility to go, "Hey, guys, look at what we did here. This is where I think we did really well. This is where I think we can improve." But those videos, I mean, like we were just talking about, there's so much value in those videos. Pictures are great too, but those videos, man, if done right, there's so much value in those video clips. We in my department at Fort Lauderdale, we have a very strict SOP, but it's very liberal as long as you do the right things with them. If you bring them to the PIO, they go through the normal channels. They'll find their way on social media. You can share them after that. So we have a very robust policy that we're very supportive of the social media aspect, and we do it the right way. We highlight our wins. We show people what we're doing out there. And this goes back to things like recruitment and retention. We want people to see what we're doing and what we do well. So we're proud of what we put out there. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of videos and pictures. I know some departments are still struggling with that, and that's 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 going to be a challenge, and that's fine. I think most of the ones in my area have learned to incorporate that into what they do on the day to day. And like you said, I think that my favorite quote that you just said, I think this was Brian, is ring cam ready. I think that's going to be my new favorite quote. Ring cam ready. But it's so true, right? Everywhere you go, there is a ring cam, there is a dash cam, there is a body cam on a police officer. We were talking about maybe the future having them on paramedics. It might be the future, but they're everywhere. I was walking through my neighborhood the other day, and I don't think I could count how many houses did not have a camera on them. So if we're going out there thinking that we're not going to be recorded, we're not going to be on pictures, we're wrong. We're absolutely wrong. So if we look at it in terms of the opportunities, if we look into it as what can we do with these in a positive way, I think that they have massive, massive value for us.
No, I agree. Jesse, I'm coming right to you because I just want to say this part is we have helmet cameras. When I started here, we bought helmet cameras. We put a policy in place for their use. And so, I think in the after actions world, letting our people see the time. I know, Jesse, you can talk about this when we get that the time to task aspect of it, right? I mean, how long did it take you to get in the building? Oh, we were in there really quick. Well, how long was really quick? Like, how long did it take to deploy a line? And then how do we take those? We'll talk about that here as we kind of transition to the training aspect, but how do we take those true data points of video timelines and apply those into some time to task training elements to improve ourselves on the fireground? So Jesse, what do you got?
I'm glad you brought that up because that was actually something that occurred in my first couple of weeks in the training division. We just got video cameras put in the engines, so they would record whatever the camera's aimed at. And we had a couple of similar fires in a row where it's a car inside of a garage and working garage fire spreading to the house. So watching those, the initial direction from the chief is, I want the water to come out of that line faster. How do we do that? So it was really an opportunity for an after action review, and he did a good job of explaining that those cameras were in the trucks with the idea of training and continuous improvement. So we did drills with all the shifts and the crews, and really what it turned out was being able to answer simple questions. Why are we doing something? When are we doing something? And how are we doing something? And what was clear after watching those videos and going through how we would load our hose in the past, it wasn't consistent amongst all three shifts. So it was kind of like an exotic hose load, and it was like a language with a local dialect. The way A shift put it back versus the way B shift put it back versus the way C shift put it back. And while they would all work, they had these little nuances. So you could see that whether the hose was ran through the nozzle or whatever the case was. So it was a great opportunity for us to standardize that and communicate what right looked like in terms of our hose loads and our cross lays. And when we still look at the videos, and I'm looking at this one here, there's all these opportunities for positive reinforcement for the things that we are doing and validating the work that's been done in this example, 11 years ago, but from the crews and figuring out the solution to this problem. So that opportunity for positive reinforcement is massive. And as far as the helmet camera footage, we had a gentleman who had a helmet camera, and he gave me some footage, and he said, "You are going to love this video. It captured everything." And the funny part of this was it was a fire in a really large home on the third floor, and the third floor is only accessible through the master bedroom in the walk-in closet. So it was a weird scenario, but what he said I was going to love the video was because it backed up what we just trained on. So it shows the crew on the stairs. They find this door, and they decide the fire's behind this door. So here's what we're going to do. When we open the door, we're going to be ready to flow water. Regardless of whether we can see the flames or not, we know the fire's in this room. And the funny part is when they open the door, it's completely charged with smoke. The helmet camera, you see nothing. But what you hear is the crew coordinating their attack and having a plan for what they're walking into. A very vent-limited fire, and really what would be an attic space, but in this instance, was a sound, like a music studio. And just great crew coordination. Everybody had situational awareness, and another positive reinforcement point of they were aware of any hazard. They had a plan. Their plan works, and the visual thing we see is just a black screen, yet still priceless. I could probably start making those up for each fire. This is it's black.
The win with no visualization. That's good.
Correct. But it was reinforcing all the same.
So I want to ask one topic on this with regards to these after actions is how do our SOPs and SOGs play into those, right? So I always feel like these are a good opportunity for us to reflect back on those SOGs as either, hey, this is working. These are things we didn't go well that maybe we need to sharpen up on, or the SOG is dated or out of sync of what we need to do, and it's a good time for us to adjust it. So Brian, you do yours. You're saying like maybe the kitchen table with your company. Do you pull that SOG out for the first alarm? Do you pull that SOG out for a highway call or whatever, and say, hey, listen, let's just go through. Did we do these things and did they look correct, or how does that play out in your world?
Yeah, because you have to have that standard of evaluation, right? I just can't arbitrarily say, hey, this is what I think went right and what didn't go right. Let's look at it. Did what we do deploy in line with our SOPs? Yes or no? Or does the SOP still apply? As you said, we might have evolved and that SOP was written 10 years ago and we haven't reevaluated it. And all of a sudden it's like, well, that doesn't apply anymore because we don't have that tool or we don't have that truck or the times have changed. The way the highway's laid out has changed. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to pull it out, review the SOP, and then maybe we missed a step because we haven't reviewed it lately. So you totally have to incorporate those SOPs to make sure that we're following them, make sure that we're following up with if it doesn't, that we're following up and making the changes to say, hey, we've evolved since this was written.
Yeah, no,
lithium-ion batteries wasn't a big deal for us a number of years ago, but it's changing the landscape, right? That's one of the things that's changing the landscape. Our firefighting foam's changing the landscape. You look at our landscape of the fire service, there's a lot of hot things that have come up in the last couple of years, and has our SOPs kept up with it?
I was going to ask Chief Saw that. I was like, hey, when you pulled up on that tractor trailer fire full of lithium ion batteries, what SOG number was that you guys are like, oh, SOG this is how we handle it, I'm sure you guys have something on lithium ion batteries, not knocking it. I'm just saying that to your point, Brian, it wasn't a consideration, right? We're constantly evolving, the profession. And so I think those SOGs are really necessary for us as our foundation, right? For success on the fire grounds, for success on emergencies. And if we don't review those on a routine basis and compare them to what we're doing on fires, right, wrong, or different, especially in these after actions, I think we're failing ourselves and just trying to, essentially pull the wool over our own eyes as to how we can improve. So Chief
Brian,
Shaw, you got it. What's up?
Yeah, I was going to just say something towards what
Yeah.
you talked about. And this is good that we're talking about this in terms of the after action reviews, the post incident analysis. And I've noticed this with my organization for a while. I think that there's a misinterpretation of what an email should have been an info bulletin, an info bulletin maybe should have been a memo, and a memo should have been an SOP or something that altered an SOP or created an SOP. I think that sometimes we don't do that. In other words, the things we're talking about right now, like after action reviews, these are powerful tools. But now, and because we have an SOP, we have a structure to them, and we're trying to enhance that structure. If you don't have that administrative support or that background or that thing that memorializes things, what you're doing is just sporadic in nature, and it's going to go away if there's nothing keeping it going. So that's what I'm trying to do with our after action reviews, to be quite honest. They are powerful. It's amazing to hear our people just detail what they did on scene and the learning that comes from that. When you have that senior guy, 20, 25, 30 years on, and they're describing what they do, that's right there. It's just gold. It's a gold mine. And you're just sitting there writing things down. You're soaking in all that information. And we can do that from a department stance. The learning that comes from that is amazing. But if you don't have a structure in place to keep that going, well, let's say I leave. Who's going to take over for it? I mean, maybe they don't get done anymore. I don't know. So going back to the admin part, the SOP part, memorializing it, making something that's static in nature is important. It's huge. So I'm glad you mentioned that part of it. It's not the most sexy part of it. But that being said, it's important to make sure that these things that we are doing that do bring a lot of value, that they're memorialized in such a way that they keep going, not just based on the person that's there, but that the department needs it and the structure's there to keep it going, regardless of who steps into the position.
And I think, Jesse, you hit the nail on the head too. As administration, right? And we're in administration, is our job is to support the operations on the field, right? And that's what we need to do, whether it's through sound SOGs, policies and procedures, even if those policies and procedures affect us. Like, hey, we need to conduct after action reports. after action reviews, well, that's going to fall in the administration, but it's the accountability tool, and that's what SOGs and SOPs is an accountability tool for us to ensure that everything's operating good. All right, so we're about 2/3 whatever into this thing and talking, and I think we've covered after action reviews really well. And I want to transition. So we've done these after actions. We've learned from them. We understand how they can apply to us in improving our fire grounds, our emergency scenes. But how do they, beyond the kitchen table, beyond the video screen, the table talk or whatever, how does those transition then into us as training officers applying those after actions into training, right? How do we take that needs analysis and put that into tangible training efforts so that our crews improve, so that the next time we do an after action, we're not just like, oh, hey, we had another issue with that inward swinging door. Last fire we had that too, so let's do better next time. How does that work? And Jesse, I see you're nodding your head. What do you got? I know you're big on the time to task stuff, like we said, and really drilling down into these functionalities. So
yeah, time to task is huge, and part of the reason time to task is huge is it's a good example of like that hands-on micro learning. Right, we're making the most of our minimal resources, whether that resource is time, equipment, or our training facility in general. And as we're looking through these videos or pictures or whatever resource we have, we're identifying those opportunities to get everybody else up to the level we saw on the video, or to make that even that much better. So from a time to task perspective, when you look at the fire service as a whole, there are things we can all be better at in terms of getting our masks on, quick mask, forcible entry, initial line deployment, flowing that first hand line. And those are all things we look for. I think the best example that we could use organizationally is actually on the EMS end. Everything we do is recorded on a mega code, right? Every second of that cardiac arrest is recorded. So when we set goals for ourselves organizationally, no pulse check longer than 10 seconds, it's super easy for us to identify very objectively, black and white, protocol driven, where were those opportunities to improve that process. And then it's very easy for us to immediately run a mega code with the same goals that we just identified, same criteria, and keep that benchmark where we want it. From a fire perspective, we try to take those same lessons that we learned from EMS and apply them on the fire end, whether it is the inward swinging door, or when we see the line, are we following the rules of our stream, steep, straight, steady, those sorts of things.
I like it. No, it's all good. Like I said, it's really taking those words and that verbiage into actual training and making your firefighters better. Brian, what are you thinking? What do you got from what's Cotterville doing with this?
If we don't push this into training, well, then it's just a problem identified, right? We didn't solve it. We just identified the problem and we keep on going on. So we have to incorporate it in training. But what's the challenge I have at training is that it has to be applicable to me. Well, what's more applicable to me than using my own department or mutual aid departments? I mean, Steve can come out with a great post-hurricane incident thing, but that's not going to apply to me in the Midwest. Where if we actually use something that happened to us, it's a good thing. So live burns this year, we took 6 fires that had problems and incorporated those in the live burns. The guys rolled a wheel, and that wheel translated to a problem that occurred. The base incident was the same, but oh, you rolled this one, your radio system failed. Now what are you going to do? Oh, you rolled this one, your first in pumper, a minute in, stopped pumping. Okay, these were real incidents that occurred in our county. So the 4 mutual aid departments that were participating in training used some big examples. We incorporated it into training, and it was great. The guys loved it because it was real things that happened in our world, in my county, in departments like mine. So it was very well receptive, and it was a great opportunity for us. So yeah, you have to use them in training.
No,
I think we have to be a judgment-free zone, right? I mean, yeah, that's really what it boils down to. All of a sudden, it's like, well, that was Brian's incident, and that's where he messed up, so we're not going to mess up again. No, it needs to be judgment-free.
And I think offering those challenges, that have really occurred, whether it be in your department, whether your region, county, whatever, really brings it fully home, because it's like we say, when we're doing, Mayday training, we always have those reports of, the NIOSH line of duty death right there to show, hey, this is why. But when we can get it off a real incident, whether it even maybe it doesn't even have to occur, but maybe it occurred in St. Louis area or occurred in Florida or Michigan or something. So it's somewhat relative. I think it brings it back home and sets that foundation that, okay, this could happen. It did happen just down the street or across the state or whatever. So Chief Shaw, what do you got? You got any examples of this in Fort Lauderdale?
I do, and I'm glad we're talking about this. And Jesse, I'm glad you mentioned the EMS aspect of things, especially the work on the codes and the fact that they're recorded. I know that some departments are doing that, and that really does help them. I think in departments that aren't familiar with that, that's a scary thing at first. In fact, we don't do that yet. And I know if I mentioned on scene, hey, we're going to record this entire code, I'm sure that would ruffle a lot of feathers. But in terms of the evolution, the culture of EMS, we're exploring that to see what that looks like. There's a lot of value there. I will tell you that as an example. And we're talking about the after action reviews. When we were doing training, we try to take, if we're doing a night drill or a series of drills in which we're bringing all our crews in for training, we try to learn something from it, right? So for us, let's see, a few years back, we were doing a lot of acquired structure work on some 2-story acquired structures that were being torn down to build some high rises. Now, if you are familiar with South Florida, you know that most of our structures down here are CBS block with hurricane windows. So it's often amusing for us in South Florida to look across the country the way that you like break a standard window and we're like, wow, that pipe pole or the Halligan would just laugh. The windows we have here would just laugh at those tools. I mean, they're monsters. But we train for it. So one of the things we did while we were doing this training is as we were doing VES operations, we were realizing that on the second floor of VES operations, we don't want our folk putting a ladder up there and carrying up a K12, 25-pound saw to chop open those windows. So what we learned from it is after we were all done with the training, helped us justify the need for different types of tools. So right now, for example, we carry 9-inch battery-powered saws on some of our trucks. But those came from the impetus from the training. We realized a problem, we realized a scenario, and all the information we collected afterwards helped us justify an additional cache of equipment on tools that were lighter, a little more effective on certain operations. So we try to do that as much as we can with the training that's out there. If we're doing the training, I'm big on the feedback. What do we learn from this? What are the lessons learned? What can we add to our cache? What do we need to do in terms of altering our protocols and such? So, and that's the important thing. And we always talk about feedback. We always talk about after the training's done, what are we learning? What are the lessons learned? What are we doing with that feedback? It's if you're not learning, growing, stretching, adjusting, that's part of what we're doing. That's why we're doing this. And for the after action reports, the post incident surveys, that's a big part of that. So that's just one example. But I think that it goes back to also to what you were saying. Our areas are different. And how many times have we heard firefighting is local? Firefighting is local, right? Well, what we do in South Florida, like Jesse mentioned, or like Brian mentioned, isn't maybe what they do up in the Northeast, Northwest. So these opportunities to really stretch and learn from all the training you do is not only advantageous, it's necessary.
We're all joking in the background here because if anybody knows Chief Shaw, he's a big saw guy, and even in after actions and post incident analysis, they somehow managed to work a saw comment.
I worked it in, yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. It took him 47 minutes or 48 minutes to get it in, but he managed to work it in. It's amazing, something amazing. So, no, I think it's good. I totally agree. You have to work through these hiccups and things that occur on calls. And when when we go through these after action, we find the things that maybe didn't go so right, whether it be a fire, EMS call, whatever. We take those opportunities to say, okay, we know this didn't go right. How can we conduct some training to recreate that so that we can go through that scenario again and look for ways to make it right so we don't do it again? And then, of course, like I said earlier, grab that SOG, SOP and say, okay, did the SOP fail us? Did the crew fail us? The equipment fail us? The truck fail us? The personnel fail us? What occurred that didn't go right? And sometimes, things just don't go right. We're just don't work in a perfect world. So we just have to accept those things. So good discussions on all those things. The final point I think, and I would bring up to all these things is for my area, Brian's area, I can't speak for Chief Shaw and Chief Marcotte's here, but incorporate your partners that came in with you. If you've got automatic aid, mutual aid coming in, learn together as those crews, right? It's a big component. I don't run a structure fire at all by myself. Very rarely do we run any highway calls by ourselves. So if there's an opportunity to, get together with those partners that you're running with and learn together, you're strengthening relationships, you're building bonds that are going to go onto the fire ground emergency scene. and learn. So I don't know, Chief Shaw, you guys do, you're probably big enough. You guys running with a lot of automatic aid.
Yeah, that is a whole nother subject, another
Okay.
talk.
Well, that'll be an April show. We'll talk about automatic aid training.
I'll bring some special. I'll bring a load of special guests in on that, on the closest unit response and fastest unit response. That's a whole other topic for today. But since you brought it up, yes, because we have that, it is very important that we are collaborating and coordinating with our local partners and local agencies. When we train, we should be training with them, and we do a decent job with that. But yeah, that's a big deal in our territory these days.
Gotcha. Lit off a hornet's nest there. That's good.
Well, but going back to you brought it up again. When we do these after action reviews, and we're good at this, we bring all of our partners that were on those scenes in with us. In our flooding event last year, we brought in all of the departments that were so awesome and gracious to lend us trucks and send us personnel and equipment. We brought them in as part of the after action review. We brought the FWC, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Captain. Listen, FWC's got some awesome equipment. I mean, they got buggies, they got airboats, they got some awesome equipment. But we bring them in because we're showing them respect of, hey, let's all learn together. And we're trying to keep that trend going.
That's good. Yeah, build those relationships early so that, when you need it next time, you're not like, who are you people again? Yeah, we know who they are. We know what toys they can bring to the party and what we can do to leverage our strengths so that we respond better together.
Yep.
All right. We are about wrapping this show up. I'll go around the horn with some final thoughts from everybody. Brian, we'll start with you down there. Final thoughts on after action, post-incident analysis, training stuff, ISFSI in general.
Let's not live in silos, right? So, I mean, there's good stuff to be learned by everybody. And if I keep the stuff to myself, then I'm not benefiting anyone else. Likewise, I'm hoping people share with me, and I'm open to have ideas shared with me on different ways to approach it. So I appreciate the after action.
Yeah. Jesse?
I'd say organizationally in whatever department that you work in, your after action review doesn't have to be perfect, so to speak, in terms of the most formalized thing in the world. One of the best examples I can think of is from this fire that we just had. The battalion chief on scene grabbed everybody once the fire is extinguished, pulled everybody into the driveway and said, hey, before we release anybody, I just want to go around the horn kind of thing. And I want each crew to talk about what they saw, what they did, and what they learned while we were here. And it was great. It didn't matter what rank or what seniority somebody was. Everybody's input was valuable, and it took maybe 10 to 15 minutes. We were standing in the snow, just like they probably are in Fort Lauderdale right now, or the white sand beaches. But it was a great opportunity while we're there, get it while it's hot, and great information sharing, great perspective, because oftentimes we're so limited because maybe I'm only on this side or I'm on this floor or whatever. And it was a great opportunity for me to be there and watch that in the training world, to know where we can fine tune things after the fact. So I'd say start somewhere.
Absolutely. Chief Shaw?
Just to tailor up what these guys just said, and I love that, Brian, you said no silos. I think that we still struggle with that in the fire service. We have individuals that are siloing things, that are holding it close to his or her chest, and we got to stop that. I love thinking of the plus one mentality, having redundancy. If I'm doing something alone, why? In fact, the reason my other chief, my EMS chief here, isn't here right this second is because he's in a meeting right here. I invited him to come in here with me, but he's got a pressing plan that he's working on right now, so I can't have him here. But I'm always thinking of that plus one. But it's a cultural thing, Brian, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It's cultural. It has to start somewhere. We have to be developing that plus one mentality, that sense of working with other people. It starts from the top. We got to be doing that. In terms of what Jesse just said, there's these after action reports, especially on the administrative side, are wonderful. I mean, I love doing them. They're one of my passion projects, but I don't think they beat the tailboard. Like right after the scene's over, like you said, you're gathering everybody up, you're having that discussion just post the incident. That it's hard to beat that power. I mean, we can do our best to get all the information and make it very comprehensive and learn from it, but when you're right there doing that tailboard post-incident survey, post-incident analysis, that's special, and it needs to be done religiously. But it's a cultural thing as well. The last thing I'll say is I'm glad we covered this, and thank you for letting us talk about this today, Brian. This was a good conversation. I think I'm glad that we got to talk about everything from the video-based ones, the written ones, the large-scale ones. I'm doing these for events now as well. I think that the post-incident analysis, the after-action reviews are just a way to really garner all that information that was learned, all the lessons learned, and just spread that out through the organization. So I'm glad we took the time to talk about this. There's a lot of power in this.
No, I reiterate everything you guys are saying. This has been a great discussion. Good talk. It's always a good time talking with you guys. Breaking down those silo walls, the +1, the collaborative efforts. Those are all going to strengthen our departments. And with these after actions, these post-incident analysis, we're only going to get stronger through a solid review. It's hard to believe we're already in the middle of February. We are just about 2 months away from FDIC. You'll see all of us up there. We're all doing some classes up there teaching. The April 15th through the 20th. Hands-on training is the Monday and Tuesday of FDIC, along with some workshop conferences, some pre-conference workshops. Classrooms start Wednesday. It's going to be a little different this year. It's going to be it'll be a great show, but they're changing some stuff up, adding some more training stuff to it. So it's a great opportunity if you've never been to FDIC to sign up. A few hands-on workshops are already sold out, which is crazy to think they've already sold out, but that just shows you where the talent is in terms of the instructor cadre that they've already got lined up for this thing. So if you have not yet, get to FDIC.com, sign up for FDIC. We'll be up there. The ISFSI will be up there. We have our social on Tuesday night, so we'd love to see you if you're a member. ISFSI.org. If you're not a member yet, please join. If you're going to FDIC and you're a member of ISFSI, you want to get 10% off. So it already pays for its membership fee right there. So we'd love to have you join. Be sure to get out there. Thanks to Fire Engineering, Chief Rhodes, and the entire Clarion team for allowing ISFSI this opportunity to discuss training. And we look forward to you in April as we discuss some more training stuff that's affecting you guys. Stay safe. Thanks, everyone.